Hi, good evening. Welcome to Author's Talk by Trishna. The third housemate, story 6. Let's begin. Part 1. The change in weather was sudden. It had been a crisp, clear sky throughout the day. Hot, bright May sun had been pounding on the city and its people, and then around 7 in the evening, a storm and heavy showers brought respite from the torturous heat of Delhi summer, and with it began a series of strange events. Nidhi returned home from her office around 6:30, tired and hungry. It had been one of the most hectic days at work. She had been on her toes almost the entire day. She removed her shoes and walked barefoot on the cemented floor of the house. It gave some relief to her aching feet. She could hear clanking sounds in the kitchen. Manisha, her younger sister, was getting a cup of tea ready for her. What a blessing! Mani has managed quite a bit of setting up of the house. Good use of a day off. Nidhi looked around with a gratified smile and plonked her bottom on an easy chair. After a cup of tea, I am going to rest. I am too tired to do anything today. Hopefully, Mani has got dinner ready too. If not, then we'll eat sandwiches or order food. I've no energy to cook, and probably Mani is worn out too. She massaged her swollen feet to ease her pain. Nidhi worked as the manager at a telecom company. Manisha had freshly joined an export company as its designer. The sisters had shifted to this house just 2 days ago. It was not easy to set up a house all over again, but they wanted to live in a better locality. The previous neighborhood was noisy and congested. Moreover, they had got this accommodation in Anand Lok at a very reasonable rent, less than the previous one. It was a real windfall to be able to live in one of the greenest areas of South Delhi. Yesterday, Nidhi had taken the day off to shift to this new house, but that was all she could manage with lots of work in the office piling up in her absence. Manisha had taken 2 days off. Manisha walked into their sitting room with a tray. Two steaming cups of tea and a plate of cookies were temptingly resting on the tray. Nidhi's hunger erupted like a fountain. What do we have for dinner, Mani? She asked, popping a large piece of cookie into her mouth. Khichdi. Manisha replied with a frown and took a sip of her masala tea. Having spent 2 days setting up the house all on her own without much help from her sister, she was feeling out of the sorts and worn out. Will do, Nidhi sat back to enjoy her tea. And there's another good news. This house is infested with mice. Oi, Nidhi suddenly and instinctively raised up her feet. Did you see any? She was incredibly frightened of mice. No, but the whole day there were scurrying noises, sometimes from right behind me. I think the mice here are very daring. The moment I will turn, they will disappear faster than my eye could catch. But the sound that came now from the kitchen was sudden and startling. Manisha sat up with a jerk. Something had been dragged. The dustbin. The frown on her brows became deeper. She could see a part of the kitchen from her position. Had she noticed a movement there, a shadow? Large, not at all like a scurrying mouse. She got up and strode into the kitchen to check. Nidhi followed her. The dustbin lay toppled, the garbage scattered. Oh my God! Now this is increased work. We need to buy a mousetrap immediately. They are big jungly rats, not small mice. Manisha gazed at the mess in the utter disgust. Nidhi shrugged, walked out of the kitchen, picked up her cup of tea, and strode out to the terrace. From the rooftop, she could see clouds that had gathered at the horizon. A cooler breeze had begun to blow. A shadow dashed past her and seemingly dived down towards the ground. She looked up and then around. Whose shadow was it? There had to be a big bird flying close by. Why couldn't she spot any? Manisha joined her. She would clean the mess later, she decided. She loved her tea piping hot. Traces of frown were still lingering on her face. The mystery behind the mess bothered her. How could rats topple a bean heavy with all that garbage? She noted Nidhi hanging over the railing and peeping down. What are you trying to do, Didi? Jump down and commit suicide? No, something big flew past. I'm trying to locate it. Something big. You saw it? No, just its shadow. Something big. You saw it? No, just it's a shadow. Manisha drew in her breath. Again a shadow. Big one, she wondered. A sudden violent draught of cold breeze took them by surprise. A swarm of dark thunderclouds were fiercely invading the city's firmament. Lightning lit up the darkening sky in flashes of explosions. Rumbling thunder trailed. The intensity of wind increased to turn into a squall. In no time, a full storm was blowing. Both the sisters had finished their tea but continued standing on the terrace, enjoying the cool blast. Manisha winced and rubbed her eyes. Didi, let's go inside. I am getting dust in my eyes. Moreover, it's going to rain. Close your eyes and enjoy the cool breeze a little more. A rarity of summers. Cool breeze. Sis, this is a hurricane. But Nidhi wasn't listening to her. Her attention was completely diverted. She had a strange feeling that someone had just walked past her, brushed against her. She peered through the air that had gone hazy with dust. The whole terrace was empty except for the two of them. Okay, let's go inside, she declared, and with long, quick strides walked towards the door without waiting for Manisha, who, however, followed her instantly. She too had felt an unexplained uneasiness. It was the second time she had that feeling today. She had this peculiar feeling of someone being around, watching her, when she was alone in the kitchen in the afternoon. Nidhi was already inside when Manisha grabbed the doorknob to close the door. She could feel the force of the wind as she pulled the door inward to close it. It was only half closed when a huge piece of glass came flying and hit the edge of the door, barely inches away from her head. She instantly ducked. If she hadn't, she would have surely landed in a hospital with a serious head injury. The glass piece fell on the floor and shattered into thousands of tiny splinters. Manisha shut the door in haste. Nidhi stood aghast. It had been a narrow escape. A few seconds' delay in reaching the door, and the glass would have crashed against her sister's head. What providence! Manisha was safe. She blew out in relief. My God, what a storm! It could even lift a huge pain, Manisha remarked. The room suddenly plunged into darkness. She grabbed her mobile phone lying on the side table and switched it on with her unsteady hands. The narrow escape had rendered her nervous. Nidhi opened the drawer where she had kept a box of candles the previous night. She walked into the kitchen to fetch a box of matchsticks to light the candle. As she began to open the box, she heard shuffling noises. For a few seconds, just stood still. Must be mice, as Manisha had mentioned. Nidhi tried to overcome the fear that was invading her. She picked up the matchbox and rushed out. When she returned, Manisha was sitting on a chair with her face between her palms, thinking. A heavy piece of glass carried 3 floors up from the ground. Not possible. The storm is not that violent. She contemplated loudly. Of course, silly, it hasn't come from the ground. Only a tornado can lift up things like this, and this isn't a tornado. Maybe the glass piece came from someone's house. Nidhi got busy fixing the candle in the stand. Whose house? Nidhi's froze hand in the air. She looked towards the window. Manisha followed suit. Although nothing was visible through the curtained window, they both knew that their house was the last house in the lane. There was only a boulevard beyond, lined on the both sides with dense rows of neem and peepal trees. I wonder where that glass came from, Nidhi murmured, her voice lost in the loud sound of the rain pounding on their roof and the terrace. She carefully fixed the candle in the stand and sat on a chair. All of a sudden, the stand toppled and fell on the table with a force. It was such a sudden movement that both of them were taken aback. It was only when the tablecloth began to emit smoke that Nidhi re-ticked. She was quick to bring down a book on the burning candle and the smouldering tablecloth. What is happening tonight, Didi? There was no storm inside to topple it. Manisha was staring at the black hole in their new tablecloth. They sat upheld in the silence till the electric current was restored after 15 minutes. I'll fix dinner and the mess in the kitchen, Manisha declared. The outside mess can be left till tomorrow for the cleaning lady. She then halted at the kitchen door to assert reminder. Didi, don't walk out barefoot till the place is cleaned. Nidhi nodded and stretched on the bed. She switched on the TV, but there was no satellite transmission due to the stormy weather. She turned on the songs stored in her mobile phone and closed her eyes. The tiredness overtook her immediately and she dozed off. She had no idea for how long she slept, 15 minutes or an hour. In her sleep, someone called out her name. She responded by slowly walking towards the terrace door in a trance-like state. She opened the door. A young man stood outside. Nidhi, why have you come to live in my apartment? The man's voice sounded cold. The pressure cooker whistle sounded from the kitchen just then and woke her up. She slowly sat up. It was still raining outside, so the storm had subsided. What kind of dream was that? It seemed so real. She rubbed her eyes and looked at the kitchen door. Someone seemed to have entered it suddenly. She didn't really see anyone, just had a fleeting glimpse. Money, are you in the kitchen? Nidhi inquired from her bed, making no effort to get off it. She was still tired. The nap didn't seem to have helped. Obviously, Manisha's irritation was apparent. She is not complaining, but she is pissed. Nidhi got up and walked into the kitchen. Thanks for getting the food ready, Mani. I should have helped you, but the day was so tiring. It's all right, Didi. I haven't made a huge effort to get dinner ready. It has taken me just 10 minutes. I know you are tired. I saw you sleeping so deeply and didn't want to wake you up. Thought I'd do that once the food was ready. You came into the room and then walked into the kitchen just now, didn't you? I saw. No, Didi. I have been in the kitchen for the past 10 minutes. Never left it for a second, and I'm not joking. I swear. But But I saw someone walking in the kitchen. I swear I did. You are hallucinating, Manisha scoffed. But she was getting bothered. Something strange was going on here. Her hunch was getting stronger. They ate dinner in a distressing silence. When they finally switched off the light to sleep, both were feeling unsettled. The following weeks, things became worse. The sisters would often hear unexplained noises in the house from the kitchen, from the bathroom, from the bedroom. They were restrained, subdued, furtive sounds. Sometimes, when they returned home in the evening, they found things shifted from their original place. They will then reluctantly blame their memory and overlook the goings on. They had already paid a non refundable rent for 3 months on the landlady's insistence. It was after about fortnight of their stay in their new house, fortnight of getting used to the mysterious happenings, that Manisha was to go to Singapore on an official tour for a week. Nidhi would be alone in the house for the first time since they had shifted here. She was uneasy about it. It was not the first time in her life that she would be staying alone. She was used to do it. She had lived all by herself for a year before Manisha had joined her. Yet the overpowering feeling that someone was around, the sneaky, unexplained sounds, were things she had never experienced before. A number of times she had suddenly looked up from her book to check on she didn't really know what. But the feelings of someone being there would be very strong at such times. So the fact that she would be alone for a week was making her nervous. She went to drop Manisha at the airport. I don't know why, Didi, but I'm very apprehensive leaving you alone this time. I wouldn't have gone if the visit weren't important. Be very careful. Manisha stood shuffling her feet. On second thought, why don't you shift with Renu auntie for a week? I will be at ease knowing you aren't alone. Don't worry, Mani, I'll be fine. You finish your work and come back fast. Nidhi smiled, pretending to be bolder than she really was. Bidding her sister goodbye, she picked up a pizza on her way back. She would eat, watch a bit of TV, and then sleep early. She was to leave for office at latest by 8 in the morning. She had called a meeting of her team at 9. With her mind on these plans, Nidhi reached home and opened the door. It was pretty dark inside. The light switches at such a wrong place. In no other house have I ever had to cross the entire room to get to it. I must remember to call the electrician the coming weekend and get it fixed next to the entrance. She reflected as she bolted the door. She checked the latch again and walked into the room. The curtains were not drawn. Dim light from a fairway street lamp fell into the room. The same light faintly lit up the terrace too. She had reached the middle of the room when she froze. Who is the man? What's he doing on my terrace? The only access to the terrace was from the sitting room. The house was locked. It wasn't even broken into. How did he get there? Nidhi stood still, her heart racing. She was alone. What was she to do now? Should she get out of the house fast? But where would she go? What if the intruder followed her? Had the person come to know that she was inside the room? She had made some loud, careless sounds while opening the door. She saw the person turning his head. He was directly looking at her. Was she visible to him in this practically dark room? She stared nervously at the man. Simultaneously, she rummaged through the stuff in her purse. She looked for mobile phone. She needed to call a police. The man now took a few steps towards the railing and then he wasn't there anymore. He had disappeared into thin air, leaving Nidhi jittery. What was that? Hallucination. She walked to the window cautiously on tiptoes and peered out. The terrace was empty. She quickly drew the curtains and switched on the light. She then rushed to check the door that opened onto the terrace. It was bolted from inside. She checked the windows. They were shut and fastened. There was no way any more could have gone out through the room. Was there another way to reach the terrace that she didn't know about? Nidhi sat on a chair, her mind extremely uneasy. Something strange was going on in this house. Was it haunted? She couldn't sleep with this doubt in her mind, nor she was so brave enough to walk out and confront whatever was outside. What was she to do? She didn't know anyone in the neighborhood from whom she could seek help. The landlady was a nice, friendly woman, but was away for a week visiting her sister in Agra. Should she call mom and dad? No, definitely not. They lived too far to help her in her anyway. They would rather get worried and spend a sleepless night. Moreover, if she reported the matter to them, the first order she would receive from Dad would be to forget about the job and return to Shimla. Nidhi spent the next 10 minutes sitting on the chair and worrying. Then she decided she couldn't go on like that. Although her hunger had somehow vanished, she must heat and eat the pizza. She removed her shoes, washed, changed into her nightclothes, and sat down to eat. She didn't know how the pizza tasted. She munched and thought about how vulnerable she was. Then she realized it could have been a shadow of a person. The thought made her smile. She left her plate with the half-eaten pizza on the table and boldly opened the terrace door. She walked out gallantly like a warrior. There was no one outside. The terrace had more light now, aided by the moon. After making sure that the terrace was empty, Nidhi returned to her room and once again bolted the door from inside. She felt much calmer now. How foolish of her to think it was a burglar or a ghost. She finished her pizza and went to brush her teeth. Setting the alarm for 7 in the morning, she switched off the main light, left the night lamp on, and went to sleep. She was fast asleep as soon as she hit the pillow. The next day was very hectic at the office. After the meeting, Nidhi had some urgent calls and then got busy finishing the pending work. She had no time to even think about the previous night's events. But the moment she sat down for a lunch with Shweta, her colleague, and she recalled the incident and had her blood run cold the previous night. I was so foolish to think that someone was on the terrace, she remarked at the conclusion of her narration. Shweta had been quietly listening to her report and now spoke for the first time. So, you think you saw a shadow on the wall and mistook it for a thief? No, there's no wall there. I live on the top floor, in a Barsati. A sitting room wall is the only wall there. By the end of her own statement, Nidhi was frowning. Then where was the shadow formed on the floor? Nidhi stared at Shweta. A shadow doesn't form in the air, she realized now. Shweta, I saw someone on the terrace, but later when I went out, no one was there. The person must have gone away, walked down the stairs, or through any other passage. Shweta offered her opinion. Gone where? There aren't any stairs. The terrace is enclosed on three sides by a railing. You can only plunge 3 stories down to become a bag of broken bones. And the fourth side is our room, silly. There must be some sort of stairs. Didn't I tell you there aren't any stairs? The only way out is through our room. The terrace is an exclusive part of our one-bedroom apartment. Anxiety was apparent on her face. Both the girls ate silently for a while. Nidhi was worried about how she was going to spend the next few nights alone in her apartment. Though Manisha was 3 years younger, she was the bolder of the two. Nidhi was so thankful that she lived with her now. But till she didn't came back, what was she going to do? Nidhi looked at Shweta pleadingly. Shweta, do you mind staying with me for a few nights till money comes back? Shweta's reply was prompt. I would, Nidhi. But you see, my mom is not keeping well these days. Nidhi could see that it was a clear-cut excuse. Nidhi returned home a little early that Friday. While in office, she had requested her aunt if she would spend the weekend with her. She was, of course, more than welcome. Her aunt had responded. Weekend with her aunt would be a breather. She now went about packing through clothes and toiletries. There was an urgency in her action. Nidhi threw one last glance around the room before locking it up. She wouldn't return here for a few days. Driving through the jam-packed Delhi road, she kept thinking if she was overacting. There was nothing unseemly in her house, but then the sounds, the feeling, and the shadow on her terrace. She wasn't imagining them. The time she hadn't been scared or anything even close. She had been thinking of heating her pizza and eating it when she had spotted the man. It was definitely a man, a young, slim man of medium height, and then he had simply vanished from the railing. She will go to office on Monday from her aunt's place, she decided. But she couldn't avoid returning home that evening. She still had to manage 2 nights alone. Monday evening, Nidhi returned to her apartment around 6. She didn't want to enter a dark room and therefore had hurried through her work to be able to leave early. Once at the door of her house, she halted and breathed deeply a number of times. She opened the lock softly, carefully. It was if she wanted to catch someone inside red-handed. She peeped in the cautiously. Light was filtering in through the drawn curtains. There was nothing amiss. She switched on the light. There was enough natural light at this hour, but she didn't want to wait for it to get dark. The room was she had left it 2 days ago, quiet and peaceful. She began to breathe easy. She prepared herself a light meal. There wasn't much choice anyway. The rations and essential food items needed replacement. There was nothing, some ham and 2 slices of bread. I'll go shopping tomorrow on my way back from office, making up her mind and sat down to her meal of ham sandwich and salad. She topped it with a large mug of hot chocolate using the last bit of milk. She managed a broken sleep that night, but all went well. The next morning she woke up tired but relieved. Tuesday turned out to be different. Nidhi left her office around 5:30. Once again clouds were gathering in the sky. The traffic was unusually heavy and there was no way she could hurry through it. By the time she neared her house, a storm had begun to brew. She didn't want to be caught in the dust storm. When she maneuvered her car into her parking slot, there was a fully blown storm raging around. She rushed up in the stairs to the apartment. Soon it was pouring outside. She had managed to reach home dry. She opened the door without much hesitation and walked in. It was completely dark. The darkened sky, thick with clouds, were impeding the filtration of light. She switched on the light and sucked in her breath at what she saw. Her bed was tousled, the chairs had been shifted, and the cushions lay on the floor. It seemed that a naughty child had been left loose in the room. She stood surveying. Maybe I left the mess in the hurry. She spoke loudly to herself. Though she knew she had nearly made the bed before leaving. In fact, she never left the bed unmade. Quelling the rising panic in her mind, she brought order back in the room and then sat on a chair, brooding. Her heart was racing, she was scared. But could she do it? Nothing at the moment. She prayed for the next 10 minutes and that calmed her down. Nidhi was in dire need of a cup of tea. Getting out of her stiletto, she quickly changed into more comfortable clothes and rushed to the kitchen. She halted at the kitchen door. "Oh my God! I forget all about shopping!" she exclaimed loudly, pounding her head with her fist in frustration. Nidhi was ravenous, so she decided to walk into the kitchen to explore the possibility of discovering some hidden rations. Even though she knew there was nothing, nonetheless, she peeped in the jar that contained tea. There was no sugar, no milk either, and no bread, no flour, no rice, no eggs, no vegetables. What was she to do now? She would wait for rain to subside and then rush to the shops. Cursing her forgetfulness, she drank a glass of water and returned to the room. The first thing that came to her mind now was the terrace. Was there someone outside today too? She parted the curtain slightly, but all that she saw was the empty space. It was only drizzling now. She heaved a sigh of relief and opened the door. Cool breeze from the exteriors rushed in. It was heavenly in the otherwise sizzling Delhi summer. She stood enjoying it for a while. Then the wind changed direction and rain began to fall directly on her. She quickly closed the door and came back to lie on her bed. She was hungry and tired and uneasy. She didn't know what to do with her time. TV would not get its signal in this weather. There was no point even trying. At such moments, she missed Manisha and wished she did not having a touring job. To pass the time, she opened her laptop and surfed through the internet. Soon, tiredness overtook her hunger and she fell asleep. When she woke up next, it was a pitch dark outside. She looked at the wall clock. The time was 10:30. She shut her eyes tightly and covered them with her hands. Oh no! Though it wasn't raining, it was useless to go out. All shops had closed by now. "Hello." It was then that she heard a crisp, clear male voice. Her eyes flew open. Someone was in the dark room. Nidhi sat up on her bed. Only the whir and honking of the vehicles in the distance interrupted in the indoor hush now. There was no one around. She couldn't see anyone. Then she noted that the easy chair had begun being moved close to her bed. She had put it next to the wall, had not she? The door leading to the terrace was slightly ajar too. Although she hadn't bolted it, she remembered closing it before sitting down. Only a strong push from inside could have opened it thus. There was a huge puddle of water in the room. While she slept, the wind had brought the rain directly into her room. The puddle made Nidhi forget the mysterious hello. She fetched a mop and a bucket to clean the mess. She then switched on the cooler even though the weather was pleasant and it wasn't hot inside. She didn't like the deep, grim silence in the room. The friendly drone of the cooler's fan was comforting. Nidhi returned to bed to call it a day. She had no choice. Her hunger pangs wouldn't allow her to read either. She switched on the night lamp and closed her eyes. She was sleeping hungry for the first time in life. And perturbed, she realized she wouldn't be able to sleep if she kept thinking about the unexplained, mysterious things happening around the house. Don't be a scary cat, Nidhi. Be strong. You shouldn't lose sleep over something non existent. Telling herself to be strong, she pulled the sheet over her face and tried to sleep. It took her a while to fall into a fitful sleep. She was dreaming, or that was she thought, but she had felt a dark shadow loom over her. Petrified, she woke up with a stare and looked around in a daze. Nidhi was painting as if she had run a marathon. She took a few deep breaths and bravely got up to see the bathroom. Washing her face with the cold water, returned to bed. I'm not a chicken. There is nothing around of which I need to be afraid. This self assurance didn't work much. She shivered under her cover. It took her a long time to fall asleep again. Sometime during the middle of the night, her eyes flew open once again. She could see the door of a room wide open and light emitting through it. Why was the door open? And what was that light? A shadow slowly began to be formed. Right in the center of the door frame, it was the shadow of a slim man. Same shadow, so familiar. Nidhi's heart was racing. She was wet with perspiration and her night sweat stuck to her. What was happening in her life? And then, like a candle burning off with a dying flicker, it was all gone. She was sitting up on her bed, staring at the faded vision. She rubbed her eyes in disbelief and looked at shining needles of the wall clock. It was 3:30 in the morning. She realized that she was racing the wall and not the door. She had slept facing the door, but she had now woken up in the exact opposite position. How? She was not a sleepwalker. Had she been dreaming, or had she witnessed some strange spectacle? Something was not right here in this apartment. It was eerie. They couldn't continue to live in it. They must be start looking for a new house. I will discuss it with Money when she returns today. For the next few hours she tossed and turned into her bed. Only when the downlight seeped in did she manage to doze off. When she woke up next, the sun was shining brightly. This was unusual. She was used to walking at the crack of dawn. That gave her plenty of time for her exercise, reading the newspapers, and to eat sumptuous breakfast. She looked at the clock now. The time was 8:30. Oh my God, I am going to be late today. She hopped out of her bed in 15 minutes and she was out rushing towards her car. Her stomach was growling in protest. She hadn't eaten anything since yesterday's light lunch. She would order a deluxe sandwich from the coffee shop as soon as she reached office. So it was all for today. Hope you like this story. We'll continue with part 2 tomorrow. So be on time. Subscribe my channel to get the latest updates. Thank you so much. Have a peaceful good night.